Hello everyone, hope you're all doing well, and thank you for tuning into Moose Motion. Remember to like the video if you enjoyed the content, comment below what you think, share with your friends, and perhaps consider subscribing if you're new. Anyway, let's dive into this clay car project. During this video, we'll be returning back to the little 1966 Polara Wagon project. We're going to first start out by carving out those front fenders just to get a little bit of turning radius, and later on we'll be doing a whole lot of carving and, adding a lot of oven-baked clay, pretty much covering up all the paint so far, unfortunately. However, it is used later on to help find high and low spots, so it doesn't exactly go all to waste, but yeah, a lot of it does get covered up. And anyway, the paint will be covered in the future with plasticine. The paint is more or less just an added layer just to kind of keep it safe if scratches or something occurs during the animation process. That way is nowhere near as noticeable as it would be before if it's just a plain white background as it normally would be. I'm also happy to announce that, well, technically it's not installed just yet. I'm still voicing this over while working on the car, not gonna lie. Technically it's in clear coat right now. However, the steering component is completely finished, so that is done and will be installed later on this evening. Unfortunately, my sleep schedule has been slightly screwed up for this little car, but that is okay. It's pretty much almost near completion at this point. We will probably shortly be adding on plasticine at this point. I don't think there's too many more steps I can really think of that, well, be delaying unless I have some installation problems later on. So for this first little bit here, our main focus is going to be making sure that those front wheels can work properly. So that means spinning without any rubbing, as well as turning with bare minimal rubbing. Now, most of my cars do have some touching issues when it comes to the steering. However, and it's all in motion, it's very, very unnoticeable, and some of the jarring around honestly kind of adds a bit of character, and it kind of looks like the car has a little bit more suspension than it normally would, and allows me to add bits of clay underneath it to kind of give some more weight transfer. So it definitely sells the, well, actual effect of the car animation in the long run, so it's kind of worth to have some of those small imperfections in the long run. Speaking of animations, if you by chance have not seen my latest one, the stop motion drag race is finally available. So yeah, it's kind of unfortunate. It's a little bit of a spoiler, so if you haven't seen it, be sure to pause where you're at and go check out the link in the description below before I spoil this for you. The little AE unfortunately does not cross the finish line in one piece. Therefore, that's kind of why I've been really focusing on this little wagon to help extend the clay car family once again. Don't worry, the AE will return. There will be a little restoration video dedicated to that later on. However, it won't be your typical how-to video. It's going to be my little clay characters restoring the car at a little junkyard set that I've made some time ago. So be sure you have post notifications turned on so you don't miss that. Not sure exactly when I'm going to get around to that, unfortunately. I do have a dinosaur fight that I want to work on, as well as some SCP stuff to do. That should be a little easier than the really small 1/32 scaled car stuff. However, this stuff does take a lot of time, so your patience is definitely appreciated. And if you are just by chance tuning into this series, be sure to check out the post notification below again for the, various other episodes on the how-to part, so therefore you can catch up on this series and you're not left completely behind in the dark. However, this is kind of one of the more important ones because this is kind of when we're done all the hard work at this point and all the major mechanical components go together. I'm not re-recording that. Oh well. I apologize for my less than orthodox articulate announcement. Anyway, be sure to keep your eyes peeled for Milton the Moose as well. If you timestamp correctly exactly when he shows up during the video, you will get a shout out my next how-to or podcast, depending on how my schedule works out here. So be sure to keep your eyes peeled for Milton. Jeez, I am tired. Anyway, so yeah, keep your eyes peeled for that moose. So if you're the first to spot him, timestamp when he shows up, and you will get a shout out and your comment pinned at the top of the comment section. Good luck, dear viewer. Here is a quick tip for some of you who are perhaps working with some of this oven-baked clay and stuff like that. When you're sanding things down and you want some nice straight edges, be sure to use a popsicle stick and or some other type of, well, nice straight object, and wrap your sandpaper essentially around that object, so that way you're not using your hand, because, well, your hand isn't a very even surface, I hate to break it to you. So the stick will ensure that you apply basically even pressure along all the surfaces, ensuring a much nice smoother edge than obviously your hand will ever be able to acquire. Don't get me wrong, you can get things pretty smooth with your hand in the end, but it's not really exactly a straight object. So if you want nice clean straight lines, I definitely suggest using something like a popsicle stick or some other various thing. Who knows? Let me know in the comment section below what other various objects you might have sitting around the house that would work well for that. Now this is where the paint and or dirty surfaces do come slight and handy, because basically all those dark spots are your low spots. Therefore, that's where you basically need to focus on adding a bit of clay to make sure that everything stays nice and smooth. Anyway, now that we're kind of done with the sanding and stuff like that, we're basically going to give it a quick cleanup and then add a whole lot of extra oven clay here, which is kind of sad because basically pretty much all of the work that I've done so far is being covered up. There's some hours that are being lost, but that's kind of how it works. And personally, I was observing the drawing and kind of noticing the body lines weren't exactly working out the way I wanted them to. So we're just going to go over the entire car once again with some very thin sheets of oven clay. Now this part was very painstaking. It took a very long time. Now I did try to do a lot of editing to make sure it went by fairly quickly, and there wasn't a whole lot of repeating, steps from previous how-to videos, so that way it's not exactly as repetitive and monotonous as a how-to video normally would be. I do my best to try and keep it, as exciting as possible. There isn't too many people making these types of, clay cars, so I don't exactly have a whole lot to base off my research, unfortunately. So it's just kind of, me working and throwing things in the wind. Hopefully it works out, and so far, I must admit, it's been quite an enjoying experience. So if you want to leave a nice comment below letting me know that you really enjoy my content and you perhaps think I'm quite talented, it definitely makes my day reading some very nice comments. And also, if you're new, be sure to hit the subscribe button, have your post notifications turned on. That's also another good way to make me smile, because your support is definitely highly appreciated. So thank you all to my dear subscribers. You're the reason I keep working very hard to provide content and perhaps provide inspiration to others of all ages to perhaps create their own claymation and or clay sculptures, be it a dinosaur, be it a car, be it whatever. Be sure to just keep that imagination, running wild. It's definitely a lot of fun, and it's, that's your really only limit to this type of thing. Unfortunately, it does take a lot of time, but you can make anything you want, which is why it was my personal favorite toy as a kid, and, part of me obviously never really grew up. I still play with it a lot, so here I am! So before anyone asks, this is just never used for pasta. It's a clay pasta roller, or a clay roller. I don't know, I can't think of a clever name. Let me know what you have in the comments below. But one of the big reasons it's one of my favorite tools, because it's definitely a big time saver. You can basically roll out large, thin sheets of clay that are essentially all even. Therefore, you can apply it to, in this case, the entire side of the car. Then lightly use a rubber sculpting tool and or your finger to essentially stick that top layer to the actual car, and then you can basically start carving out that very thin sheet, be it the wheel wells or whatever shape it is you're basically working with. Now this is a very, very tedious process. This footage is actually sped up twice the normal speed of what I'm working at, so this is one you're definitely going to want to take some time on and take care with. It's fairly delicate, but it definitely does save you a lot of time in the long run with the sanding, because, it's all even and you don't exactly really have to worry about it. Now, the only part you're going to have to worry about from now on is how much you touch it and where you touch it. So be sure to very strategically place your hands on certain parts of your sculpture at this point from now on. Now, you're also going to want to press down, especially with what I'm doing in particular, very lightly to ensure that you have no air bubbles, because essentially you're pressing, well, a very thin sheet of clay against a sheet that's already been baked. So if there's any air pockets in between there, essentially it's going to create an air bubble because, well, oxygen obviously expands when it gets heated up. So it's going to make your sculpture no longer smooth. You can fix it by poking a pin with it and then sanding things down. However, I tend to like to try and create less work for myself in the future. At least sometimes. Usually I'm not very polite to future me. However, I'm being nice to myself for a change. Hello again, my dear viewers, and thank you for sticking around to the very end of the video. That definitely helps out with the algorithm thing, as well as my watch time minutes. Now we're just going to go over the car for quick briefings, where there's some good news and some bad news. Good news, obviously, being that pretty much all our parts and our little mechanical components are in. However, the bad news is that some of them still require a little bit of massaging. I think one of the rear fenders could perhaps use a slight trim, as well as the front fenders could use a little bit off the top, because there's still a little bit too much of a rubbing issue with those front wheels, more than I like. But obviously the biggest issue being that engine sticks out pretty high, so I'm going to have to trim down the engine mount as well as the engine accordingly to make it all fit. It's going to require a bit of massaging. It won't be exactly easy, but at least everything's now together and working as it should accordingly. Just some minor massaging is required, which will probably take several hours, unfortunately, but I'm up for the task, and we'll see you next time. Hey, you've made it this far. Remember to like the video if you enjoyed the content, comment below what you think of the project, share with friends, and perhaps consider subscribing if you're new. Anyway, that's enough from me. Till next time, take it easy.